Hi folks, this is Tech Coach Adams. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make pixel art in Google Sheets and then use it to make a math review activity. Pixel art in Google Sheets is a great way to make creative little drawings that can be as simple or as intricate as you'd like. For math teachers, pixel art can be a great way to create an engaging activity to help your students practice their math facts. By using conditional formatting, teachers can set a spreadsheet up so that as students answer questions correctly, the pixel art picture is revealed, one square at a time. Okay. So to start with, you're going to open up Google Sheets, give your sheet a name, typing it up here, and then you're going to want to turn the Sheets document into more of a grid. So you want these rectangular cells to be more square shaped. So to start with, I'll select column A, and I'm going to go all the way over to where I want my grid to end. So I'm going to go scroll over to column N because I'm going to make a 14 by 14 grid. And I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard and I'm going to click on column N. So now everything between column A and column N has been selected. Okay, then if I hover between any of the letters of the cell of the column names, my cursor turns into the side-by-side arrow, which means I can adjust the width of these columns. And because I've got all of them selected, whatever I do to one will apply to all. So I'm just going to sort of cut this in approximately half. And now as you can see, cell column A to N is not as wide. I can do the same thing for the rows. So if I click on row 1 and I hold Shift and click on row 14, I can now make the same adjustment by clicking and dragging in between the rows and making them bigger. So now I've got square shaped cells. Each cell is approximately a square. It'll do. Now to make this easier for the people, my students completing this, I'm going to get rid of the cells that I don't want to use. So I'll start by clicking on cell O. I will scroll all the way over to find column Z, and I will hold Shift, click column Z, and now everything between O and Z has been selected. If I right click on any of those headers, I get the option to delete columns O to Z. Click that, and all of those unwanted cells are now gone and there's just empty gray space. Again, I'll do this as well with the rows. Click on cell or row 15 and I scroll all the way down to the bottom to row 1000. I hold Shift and click on the number 1000 in the header there, and now everything has been selected. If I right click there, then I can delete rows 15 through 1000. So now I only have columns A to N and I only have rows 1 to 14. Okay, now I can't see my entire grid right now, so I'm going to adjust the zoom level. Right now it's at 100%. If I take it down to 75%, then I can pretty well see my entire grid. Okay, so now I am ready to start designing my pixel art. Okay, so to do that, what I need to do is I need to use the fill color tool. So all I need to do is click on the cell and then click on the color in the fill tool that I want to make that cell. Okay, I can go along and do this. Okay, and I can keep doing this. To make this easier, I can also, once I've made cell B a particular color, if everything else in that row is going to be the same color, then I can grab this little blue square right in the corner, and I can click and I can drag that across all the way to the end. Okay. The other thing that I can do is, since gray is going to be my background color, I could click and drag this all the way to the bottom and just make that my background color for everything, and then I can go and start designing my pixel art picture in the middle here. That way, wherever there's nothing from my actual picture, we'll have this gray background, so at least when the students put an answer in, it will change the color from nothing to something else, so that they know they've got the answer correct. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and design a picture of a watermelon with the pixel art by just simply picking a color and adding it in. Okay, so as I finish up my watermelon here, along with dragging the blue square to drag a formatting color along, I can also, if I know that there's a whole stretch that are just going to be the same color, I can just click and drag my mouse. So if I click and drag, I can select a whole group of cells that are all side by side, and then I can just use that to change the color of all those cells at the same time. The other thing is, I can select multiple cells that are not side by side by holding the control key on my keyboard. So if I wanted to put some seeds into this slice of watermelon, I could click on the individual cells where I want to put a watermelon seed. Okay, and when the 4 of them are selected, I can go up here and change the color to black, and then it adds those cells all together, changes their color at the same time. Okay, so shift and hold to drag and grab a bunch of cells in a row, or use the little square, and hold control and click to select a bunch of cells that are not consecutive or not in a row. Okay, so now that I've got my picture drawn here, this is sort of the end result. This is what I want the students to end up with when they are done. Okay, but this is not where I want them to start. So to keep this sort of as my finished result, I'm going to add another sheet down here where I'm going to start sort of working backwards towards the question page where I want the students to actually fill in their answers. So I'm going to right click on where it says sheet 1 down here, and I'm going to choose duplicate. So right click on the name of the sheet and choose duplicate. Okay, it will create a copy of sheet 1 and bring me to it. So now I'm in my copy. So I have 2 sheets that are identical. My copy of sheet 1, I'm going to make this where I want my students to actually put their answers in eventually. So I'm going to double click here where it says copy of sheet 1, which will allow me to rename that sheet. And I'm going to call this work here. This sheet where it says work here, I am going to change this dramatically so that it doesn't look like this when the students see it. It only looks like this now, okay? Which will give me a guide when I'm setting the colors for what I want to look like when the students are done. I'll be able to see it on the screen at the same time. Here's where I need to start putting in the questions that the students will answer in order to recreate this drawing of a watermelon. So in each cell, I need to put a math problem that I want them to answer. So I can put those math problems in by just typing them right in. And when I do that, it doesn't change the formatting, it just adds the question in. Now, if I want these questions to be centered, I can click right up here between sort of to the left of cell or column A and above row 1. If I click that, it will select everything on in my sheet. I can then format the entire sheet by clicking horizontal formatting. I can make it centered, and I can also do the same for the vertical with the button right beside it, centered. So now my math problems will be centered both vertically and horizontally within the squares. So I can keep going, adding my questions along the way. So once you've added all your questions to each square in your grid over top of the picture that you've created, You then want to duplicate that page as well. So where you go down to see the tab name at the bottom, if you right click and choose duplicate, it will create an exact duplicate copy of work here. You want to change that from copy of work here by double clicking question key. Now you have your original picture, you have the space where you want your students to work, and you have the question key, which we are going to lock to make sure that if the students make a mistake, they can look here and always see what the question was. So in your question key sheet, you obviously don't want the students to see the final product. So this is where we're going to get rid of the colors so that they're only seeing the questions. So to start with, I'm going to click on that little rectangle between column A and row 1 to select everything, all the cells on my sheet. And then click on the paint can, and then you're going to choose reset instead of any of the colors, which will take all of the cells back to their original colorless format. Now all the students can see when they look at the question key sheet is the questions. Now that the question sheet looks the way you want it to, you're going to want to duplicate that sheet as well. So down here where it says question key, I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose duplicate, which will make a copy of my question sheet, and I'm going to double click and rename this answer key. This is the sheet where all of the answers are going to be that the computer is going to use to check to make sure that the students have typed in their correct answer. So cell by cell, you're going to have to go through and replace the questions that you've typed in here with the answers. So now it's time to actually put some of the formulas in that are going to turn this math activity into a picture for your students. So to start with, you want to go back to the work here sheet at the bottom, where we've got our picture with the math problems on top. Okay, we're eventually going to clean this up, but right now it's helpful to still see everything at the same time. So what we want to do is we want to actually use what is called conditional formatting, which means that you set a condition for how the formatting of that cell will look. Okay, and the condition for us is going to be if the student types the correct answer in the cell. So to start with, I'm going to select the first cell, A1, and I'm going to go up to the fill color paint can again, and then instead of choosing a color, I am going to pick conditional formatting, the second last thing on the bottom here. Okay, this allows me to set the conditions for the formatting of that cell. So right now it says apply to the range A1. That's all I want. Okay, the default that it always starts with is if the cell is not empty. I want to change that to the very bottom thing on the list. Custom formula is. Okay, and then it gives me another box here where I can enter the formula. Now formulas are very handy in sheets. There's a whole ton of them. You don't need to fully understand all of the formulas to understand that what we are looking for is a formula that will match two things. So I'm going to start with the equal sign, because all formulas in Google Sheets start with the equal sign. That's what tells the computer that it's a formula. And then we're going to use the match formula. So I'm just going to type match. I open a bracket to start telling the computer what they're going to be matching. Okay, because I'm in cell A1, I want it to match cell A1. So I'm going to type A1, then put a comma. And now it's going to ask, what do I want to match cell A1 with? Now here I'm going to use another formula that will look for a string of text inside a cell. So I'm going to type indirect. This will tell the computer to look in a cell for text. Okay, so because I've started a new formula, I'm going to have another open bracket. Here is where I'm going to tell the computer where to look for the text that it's going to match. So I'm going to have an open quotation mark, and I'm going to start by typing the name of the sheet where it's going to match. Now this is where my answer key is, where I have all the answers. So I'm looking for the answer key sheet. So I've got to type it exactly as it appears. So capitals where there are capitals, spaces where there are spaces. To tell it that I'm looking in a different sheet, I'm going to put an exclamation point after that, because that tells the computer that I'm looking for a sheet called answer key. And then right after that, I'm going to put the cell A1, which is where I have the answer to my question there. Now that I've put that in, I'm going to close my quotation mark to tell the computer that's where I want it to look to match the A1 in this cell. Then I will close that bracket to close my indirect formula. And then I need to put a comma, because now I'm back into my match formula, and I need to end it with a 0. The 0 tells the match formula what type of matching you want to do, and a 0 means an exact match. So no differentiation from the two examples. I want an exact match. And then I close that bracket, and when I hit enter, it will apply that formula. Now, because I don't have the match, I don't have the 24 in here, it still says 2 times 12, my custom formula doesn't change the formatting. But now I need to come down here and tell the computer what I want the formatting for that cell to look like if it does match. So what I want to do, and the reason I left all the colors in here, is now I can see what I want it to look like. So I need to go to the paint can here, and I want to choose the same color that is already in that box, which was dark gray 2, I believe. Now, in order to make the whole box look like it is that one color, I'm also going to change the text color to dark gray 2. So if that cell A1 matches the answer keys A1, then it will change the cell formatting to dark gray 2 for both the background color and the font. When I click done, that is now applied. So if, as the student, I now were to go in here and type 24, when I hit enter, it automatically changes the color to what I set it to and the font color. So there is actually a 24 in that cell. You just don't see it anymore because the background color and the 24 are the same color, so they blend together. Okay, now I'm going to want to take that formula that I just did there, and I want to highlight it all and copy it, because I'm essentially going to be using this formula all the way through. So I copy that formula, and then I'm going to go into cell B2, and I'm going to add another rule, sorry, B1, not B2. Again, I'm going to go down to the bottom, custom formula, and now I'm going to paste, but I need to change this A1 to B1, and I need to change answer key A1 to B1. Okay, and then again, I need to change the color to gray and gray. Whoops, that's yellow. Gray. And done. I need to go along and do this in every cell in my sheet, in the work here sheet where I want my students to work, making sure that every time I add that rule that I am doing the same formula again. Make sure I set it to custom formula, paste in the formula, replace the A1 with whatever cell I'm in. In this case, I am in K2, so I'm going to say K2 and change this one from A1 to K2 as well. Okay, and then I need to make sure that I change the color to match whatever color is already in cell K2. So K2 is that bright green, so I make sure I change the background to that bright green and the font color to that bright green. Click done, and I need to do that for every question or every cell on my page here, just in the work here tab. So once I've done the conditional formatting for all of the squares in my picture here, I can then set this the way I want it to look when the students receive it. So to start with, I will click on the little rectangle between A and 1 to select all, and then I will click on the paint can where I can see conditional formatting has been set, but I'm going to click reset. Now reset will automatically change all of the colors back to their original white. So now it's ready for the students, but it has not eliminated the conditional formatting that is still on that cell. So the conditional formatting remains, it's just the way it looks before anything else happens that has changed. So still, if the students come in here and type their answers, then the colors will change to what I set them to in the conditional formatting. And all of them will do the same thing, no matter which one it was that I select. And that's it. You get the students to go through that, and they will be able to complete the picture. Now, before you give it to the students, there's a few changes you need to make to these sheets down here. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of our original sheet 1, where we drew the picture in the first place. This we don't need anymore because we've copied it and duplicated it along the way. So I'm just going to right click on sheet 1 and delete. Now it's going to double check to make sure that you want to do that, because if you do that by accident, it's a bad thing. So you say, yes, I want to get rid of sheet 1. Okay. So now I only have my 3 sheets left: work here, question key, and answer key. Now the answer key, we obviously don't want our students to be able to see it. We want it to be there because it needs to be the check for that match formula in conditional formatting, but we don't want our students to be able to see all the answers, or they could just copy and paste them in. So we're going to do a couple of things to make this more difficult for them to actually see. It would still technically be possible, but we'll make it more difficult for them. To start with, I'm going to select cell A, and I'm going to also hold shift and select column N. So I've selected column A, shift, and column N. It's selected everything in between. I'm now going to, just like I did before, to resize those cells, I'm going to click and drag and close them as tightly small as I can, which ends up making my cells look like this. So they are all very, very, very teeny tiny, and it's very difficult for people to see what they look like. Okay, so if students were to actually get into this sheet, they wouldn't really be able to see where they're at. Okay, the other thing we're going to do to make sure that nobody gets into this sheet is we're going to hide it. So if we right click on our answer key sheet down here, we can choose hide sheet. This will make the sheet still exist, but it is now hidden so the students don't see it. Okay, so when they come in, they only see these 2 sheets: work here and question key. Now question key, this is where they go if they accidentally made a mistake when they were working on it and they forgot what the question used to say. Okay, so if they've typed over one of the questions in the work here page and then got it wrong, and then they've forgotten what the question was, they can come back to the question key to see what the question was in the first place. So we don't want them messing with this page at all. It's just for reference, it's just for viewing. We don't want them to be able to change it at all. So to protect this, we're going to right click on the question key sheet, and we're going to say protect sheet. Okay, this gives us 2 options. We can protect the range or protect the sheet. Okay, we want to protect the entire sheet, and the whole sheet is called question key, and then we're going to click set permissions. Okay, there are 2 options here: to show a warning when editing this range, or restrict who can edit this range to only you. Now this sounds like the right option, because if it's only us that can edit it, then when we give it to our students, they won't be able to edit this sheet. The problem is, if you were to distribute this sheet in Google Classroom to your students, they each individually then become the owner of that sheet, and then they would be the only you that this restriction is set to. So we don't want that. We don't want it to allow them to edit, and it would only allow them to edit. Instead, we want to switch it to show a warning. So what this will do is every time somebody tries to make a change to this sheet, it will give them a warning. Okay, so those changes are saved. Now if I go in here and I try to make a change to a sheet, it says, heads up, you're trying to edit a part of the sheet that shouldn't be changed accidentally. Edit anyway, and then you can tell them that they need to click cancel to make sure that they don't accidentally change that sheet. There's no benefit for them to changing this sheet, so there's no reason to fully block them from doing so, but we don't want them to do it by accident. So setting that warning gives them a chance. If they accidentally were to type on one of these cells, it gives them that warning that says that you're about to change something you shouldn't, and they can click cancel to make that change not happen. Okay, that just saves them from making a mistake there. So now they've got their work here sheet where they do their work, the question key where they can check if they made any mistakes, and they can go ahead and start working on this. You can now distribute this into Google Classroom to all of your students, and they each get their own copy and they can plug away at it. Okay, that's how you make pixel art for math review using Google Sheets. Thanks for watching.